Hey everybody, welcome to Sound Bombing. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Lamar Darnell Shields.
What's up, Sound Bombers? It has been since the last time we talked. There's so many things that we discussed. We just had Dr. Tawana Burrows on the show, and she rocked it. She killed it. I hadn't talked to Tawana in years, and she reminded me of all the amazing work that we did together back in the day when we were doing some work with Prince, doing some work with young people in Minnesota and in Maryland, and also in the DC area. So thank you all for tuning in to that particular show. Thank you for all your comments and your response to that. Again, we want you to subscribe to the show. We want you to share with everybody as possible. Also, we know that we have this national or international health crisis that's taking place across the country. I really want you all just to be mindful, really focus a lot on social distancing. I really want to encourage you to get outside the house. That's the one thing. You're not going to walk outside and then you're just going to fall out. But I want you to move your body. You don't have to just be exercise, but walk out. I've been walking in my neighborhood quite a bit, meeting new neighbors, meeting people I hadn't met before at all. And so again, I want you to do that. Thank you for all my sound bombing folks who just been, sending me emails, thanking me for the stories that we've been sharing. If there's a story that we could cover that you want to know more about, please let us know. Go to LDS at thecombiogroup.com. That's Larry David Sam or Lamar Darnell Shields, LDS at thecombiogroup.com. Also, you all check out my new website. I am so excited. We have a brand new website that we're launching on Monday. We're going to be launching a brand new website, and you can go to drlds.com to check it out, drlds.com to check out the website. Let me know what you think, if you like it, you dislike it, but we want to encourage you to go check it out. We have this Ubuntu quiz that's going to be on there to see if you are an Ubuntu teacher or Ubuntu educator or an Ubuntu social worker. So if you hear me talking about that concept quite a bit, we want you to take the quiz, and we are going to give you something free for taking the quiz. There are no right or wrong answers. Actually, there are. If you fail the quiz, you get nada. But again, it's still going to be a lot of fun. So check that out. So let's get down to it, Soundbound community. As the coronavirus continues to tighten its grip on America, unemployment rates have started to rise. It's an estimate that nearly 1 million workers in the U.S. could lose their jobs. In March, a stunning 180-degree turn from last month when employers added over 250,000 jobs that led to a half-century low of a 3.5% unemployment rate. Feeling the heat almost immediately are small and independent businesses who saw their work vanish in a matter of days. The pain and uncertainty of the impact of the coronavirus on small business owners is staggering and likely to be substantial. Entrepreneurs like myself are being forced to take drastic steps to continue operating, and many are fearful about their futures. A National Small Business Association member survey last week found that 3 in 4 small business owners are very concerned about the economic impact of COVID-19. Almost half have already seen reduced customer demand, and 38% aren't confident in the financial future of their business, up markedly from 15% in January. Well, I contacted the one person I knew that could make sense out of all of this mess and provide you, the sound bombing community, with some tools and strategies and just a little bit of taking a deep breath. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about my good friend, Dr. Jeffrey A. Robinson. Jeff is an award-winning business school professor, international speaker, entrepreneur. Since 2008, he has been leading a faculty member at Rutgers Business School, where he is an associate professor of management and entrepreneurship and the academic director of the Center for Urban Entrepreneurship and Economic Development. Dr. Robinson is a passionate advocate for social entrepreneurship, inclusive innovation, and economic development. He's the author of books and articles on such topics of social entrepreneurship, African American women in entrepreneurship, and inclusive innovation. Emerging from his pioneering research, the New Jersey Social Entrepreneurship Institute and the CUEED pipeline to inclusive innovation are national and international models for economic development and social problem solving using entrepreneurial approaches. He is the principal investigator for 2 National Science Foundation funded research projects on diversity and inclusion in technology and entrepreneurship. He is an editorial board member for Academy and Management Perspective. He has been the keynote speaker at international events and conferences and has taught or presented his work on 6 continents. Dr. Robinson's educational studies span the areas of engineering, urban studies, and entrepreneurship. His PhD is in the area of management and entrepreneurship from Columbia University's Graduate School of Business. And regardless of all that stuff I just said about this dude, this is my man. This is my boy. We go way, way, way back to the point where his wife witnessed the birth of my first child in my home. Before all the degrees, we were just some young people trying to make it happen, trying to make some noise. And I'm so proud that he's joining me in the Sound Bombing studio. What's up, Dr. Robinson? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for that great introduction.
Dude, you are the man. There was some things that I skipped out because you had so much stuff that was sent to me, sent to our team. Man, it is just an honor to be in your presence, Jeff. First of all, Jeff has to be one of the smartest people that I know. I remember Jeff put me down. I'm about to actually talk about our age, man. I remember Jeff walked down to my house one day with his laptop computer, and he was online. And I'm like, yo, Jeff, how are you online that you're not connected? Now, some young people that are listening, Jeff, they don't know why that's funny, right? It's like when you walk outside and you had a cordless phone. But this dude has always been innovative. He and his partner, Randy Pinkett, and the rest of the individuals are doing some amazing stuff. Jeff has helped me at the time of my business partner, David Miller, when we started the Urban Leadership Institute. He's been a great advisor. So you are here, brother. How are you doing? How's the family, first of all?
Everybody's good. Everybody's good.
And I'm sure you're super busy right now with this, not just with the situation with the disease spreading or this virus spreading out. Folks have been calling you from everywhere about businesses, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, and newspapers and television stations too. Where it's a tricky time for folks, but you got to take care of your home first. And we've got homeschooling going on, and we got to make sure that the 3 children in our house are all doing what they're supposed to do, and somewhere along the way get our own work done. So I'm having the same challenges everybody else is having. And
I'm so glad that you said that, just to be transparent. I introduce you with all these great accolades, and you've been on the stage with many people. And people don't realize that we're human, Jeff. Like, they don't realize that we have our own issues that we have to deal with. We have to manage our own family. We have to make sure that all of our stuff is taken care of, because when we're on these stages, and I've shared several stages with you, people are expecting us to provide them with some resources and some information. Well, let's just get down to it, man. First of all, I know you have this engineering background. And how did you go from engineering to now being interested in entrepreneurship? Explain that to our listeners.
Well, I was always interested in urban areas. That's how I got into this. My undergrad degrees were in civil engineering and urban studies, which was an unusual combination back then. People would say, well, why would you do both of those? Well, my desire was to always do some kinds of development and redevelopment in cities. I thought about cities. I grew up in New Jersey. Newark was the closest big city to where I lived, and we were always in and out of the city. So I was always thinking, how do you address the problems? How do you do it from a building standpoint? And to make a long story short, I always thought that business had a role in developing cities. And by the time I got to doing a PhD, some of the things I realized was that as much as I liked engineering, it wasn't my passion. My real passion was in thinking about economic development. And so when I finalized my dissertation topic, it was around how Harlem changed from the 1980s to the year 2000, and thinking about the economic issues, in particular for the entrepreneurs in the city. And so that became my specialty, and that's where I've been doing my work for the last 20 years.
So let's go back a little further about the whole business concept. Was this in your mind as a young kid? Did you come from an entrepreneurial family? Your mom and dad, who I know, is this something that you were taught, in your household, in the church where you fellowship? What really excited you about business?
So it was a conversation in our house. It goes back to my grandmother, Audrey Robinson, who had her own business, an upholstery business, where she would refurbish and build furniture for folks and redo things in people's homes. She was the only African American who had a shop on Broadway in Newburgh, New York. And that was the main street right there in Newburgh, New York, on the Hudson River, north of New York. New York City. And so, for me, it was not unusual to see a black person who owned their own business. My father did two things that I think were entrepreneurial. He had his main job during the week, but on the weekends, he had his own electrical contracting business. And he was an electrician during the week, but on the weekends, he worked for himself doing projects in different people's homes. And then later in life, he became a pastor, and so he was an entrepreneurial pastor. And to me, that was an entrepreneurial thing too. So that was never far from my experience and thinking about things. By the time I got to college, I started thinking about, well, what's my business going to be?
So this was in your blood. So it's interesting. Netflix has this special about Fannie Lou Hamer, and I'm sitting here thinking about you. Your story about your grandmother, that that as Kendrick Lamar said, it's in your DNA, it's in your blood. How important is observing those things when we're young, as a young man of color growing up in an urban environment, and then seeing the possibilities of what you can do. Do you think that that's important for young people, not even just young people of color, women, minorities, for them to see that, to get excited about it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think that's I could certainly have taken it for granted because it was just something that I saw. But in going back, if I didn't see that, what would I be thinking? Well, it's all about you can become what you see. And for me, it was not unusual to think about have my own business because I had seen people in business. I had played in the back or in the upstairs of the upholstery business when I was, a kid. And so I knew people were coming into the business. They were coming to see my grandmother. I knew how things would be organized and set up as a small business owner. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's important that entrepreneurs get out in the community, that they do the right thing, that they show other folks that this is what you could do too. And that's what it's about. Other people, other communities have the same challenges. They've got, but they may have more examples of those entrepreneurs, and so then it's a foregone conclusion. My dad had a business, my granddad had a business. I'm going to have a business, and we need more of that in our community.
So let me find out that you got some upholstery skills, brother. So when I come to your house, I better not see a broken leg on a chair where you got like some old 45 albums or a book leaning, or I better not come into your kitchen and that table is rocking and you got some napkins under that. So this is in your DNA, man. So you all know
Hey, I said in business. I didn't say upholstery business. That's a whole different thing.
So for those that are out here trying to figure out what new business to go into because of the coronavirus, if you see Dr. Jeffrey Robinson on the turnpike in New York selling furniture, we know that he got it. He got it from his grandmother. So let's talk about your first business. What was your first business, man?
So my first business was inside Rutgers University as a student. I was part of a crew of folks. We were all thinking about how can we create some ways to make some money, but also do some community programs we were trying to do. Our main desire was we wanted to do these workshops about how to go to college in some of the urban communities in New Jersey. But we were broke college students, so to get there and drive there, get the gas, give out prizes, make the photocopies, we needed money for that. And our vehicle for it was a company we call Mind, Body, and Soul Enterprises. And so what we sold on campus, this is going to date me too. It's going to go back a few years. Were records and CDs and tapes with a next day service. That was our business model. Next day service. And for the young people who I talk to in my classes, the young entrepreneurs, they have no idea about those days when you had to wait. When an album dropped, you had to wait for days or weeks before you could get it.
But that was the fun about it. That was the fun about an album, Jeff, was going to the record store, opening that plastic when we went to the CDs, opening it, reading the credit. It was a ritual that young people just don't get anymore, man. They just don't get.
That's true. Absolutely true. So that was the first business, and we sold the records and CDs and tapes from a catalog that we had in the dining hall. If you purchased it today before 6 o'clock, we would have it for you tomorrow by 5 o'clock. So that's the way the business worked. And then we got good at doing these workshops and doing these presentations in the schools. And then, eventually we got so good at doing the presentations and the workshops in the schools, educational services, that we didn't have to sell records and CDs and tapes. People were paying us for that. And that company became a training company that put food on the table and paid bills for myself and business partners, all the way from 1995 till 2000. I mean, that was how it works. You come up with one business idea, and you're flexible with it, and we end up figuring out other ways for that business to expand and to grow, so that it can actually support you. We had, at one point back around 1998, there were 4 business partners involved at that point. 2 were going back into school. I was going back for my doctorate, and so was Dr. Pinkett. And the other 2, Lawrence Hibbert and Dallas Grundy, they wanted to leave their full-time corporate jobs to go do this company full-time, and we figured out a way to do it. And that's the precursor to a multi-million-dollar company. I mean, that's how it works. You learn stuff from the first business that allows you to do the second one, and then learn stuff from the second one that helps you to build the third, and so on and so on.
Well, you're talking about learning. As a business owner, and I know you've owned several businesses and you're a successful professor, what did you learn from your biggest failure? Or what have you been learning from your failures?
Yeah, so I mean, there's one failure I can remember from years ago. It was a marketing failure because we were a trading company. We had a series of sessions we could teach to interns who were working in corporations, maybe some cases for the first time. And our goal was if we could get 100 companies to hire us in a summer, I mean, we would make thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we would staff up and figure out everything we wanted to do. So what we did was we went to purchase a list of all of the contacts for these large companies from around the country. We figured out we wanted the ones on the East Coast and what size, and ended up being about 1,500 companies contacts where we would send them our brochure, a nice, beautiful brochure. So the brochures cost us $1. Then we had to send everything out. We sent all this out. Cost us a few $1,000s to actually do this marketing effort. You want to guess how many of those 1,500 brochures that we sent out? How many responses we got from that? I mean, it was classic. You send all that stuff out, and you get like 5 people calling you back. And you're like, what happened? This is supposed to be the big time. All we needed was 100 of those 1,500 to come and contact us, and we would do it. But maybe you didn't have the right person, or maybe you didn't have the right address, or maybe that person has moved on to a different position. There was all kinds of reasons why that wouldn't work, but we thought it would. And so the lesson was, we were able to get back the money that we spent, but it didn't come because of the 1,500 that we sent out. It came because of the people we knew. It came because of the network we established. It came because of the connections that we had developed over time. When we worked those connections, that was how we got business. So I remember that lesson today that I learned 25 years ago. Don't forget the connections. Work your network. If you don't do that, you're not doing anything. That's what's going to help you, and especially in the kind of business we were in, that's what's going to help you to succeed.
And I'm so glad that you talked about connections. And that is probably why I think what's happening with this virus, and we're going to jump into that in a second, that I'm really concerned about, Jeff, because we're the only animal on this planet that thrive off of human connection. If an animal gives birth to a baby, we know that baby needs love from their mother. That baby needs touch. How important is connection in the entrepreneurial space? And is that something that can be taught in a class?
Yeah, you're asking a good question. Yeah, it is important. I mean, entrepreneurship can be a very lonely experience for people because, you're going about things and doing things. You may even have clients, but they're not facing the same issues and challenges that you are. You, as the entrepreneur, especially if you don't have business partners, you go doing a lot of this by yourself. You got to wake up in the morning and get things going. You got to get it going, get it started. You got to make the calls. It's you, and you can get into some bad loops. Because you don't have enough information, you haven't asked anybody, you haven't talked to anybody. So I always advise entrepreneurs that they should have some other entrepreneurs that they can talk to, other entrepreneurs they can sit down with once a week, once every couple of weeks, have a call with, have a connection with, and that allows you to have some people to talk to who have experienced some of the things you have, or just to talk things out. As you're making decisions and as you're doing things. So it's important because if you keep doing things by yourself, you start to make mistakes. Mistakes you didn't have to make if you had a business mentor or some other fellow business owners who can help you think through some of the decisions you're making.
And I remember a decision that you helped David and I make very early in our career. We were trying to decide if we were going to become a for-profit or a nonprofit. And I remember sitting at one of our favorite watering holes, Taharka Brothers. At the time, it was not Taharka Brothers ice cream. It was Sylvan Beach. And that's where we would meet, eat, have conversations, supporting Sean. And I remember you saying to me, you said, Darnell, I think that you all should become for-profit because I'm looking at what individuals are in other spaces. And you talked about people that didn't look like us who are providing a service and getting paid for it. And out of that, you introduced me, and this is why connections are important, you introduced me to this concept of social entrepreneur. I knew what an entrepreneur was. First of all, entrepreneur is one of those words that's so hard to spell. Let me just talk about that. I'm like, I got to keep spell checking to make sure I'm spelling entrepreneur correctly. And so you threw another word in front of it, social entrepreneurship. Now, I know you have 5 things every social entrepreneur should know, and I hopefully you can share that with us. Explain to my sound bombing community what a social entrepreneur is.
Sure. The social entrepreneur is the person who goes to solve a problem using these so-called business skills, but is trying to solve a social problem. So you got all kinds of people who are doing social entrepreneurship because they're going at this with multiple objectives at the same time. Most people think entrepreneurs, they think, oh, they're in it to make money. But social entrepreneurs are the people who are in it to make a difference. So you could think about this in lots of different ways. There are nonprofit social entrepreneurs. There are those who are in the for-profit type of business, but they are still social entrepreneurs running businesses. And then there are people who kind of do their own thing. They're hybrids. They bring together the social entrepreneurship into the nonprofit and the for-profit space. There's some great examples out there. I mean, everybody from people like Jeffrey Canada, who founded the Harlem Children's Zone, is a great example of a social entrepreneur. There's people who are in who created companies like Method or Seventh Generation. They are in it because they're trying to have products that are restorative to the environment as opposed to polluting the environment. And they are social entrepreneurs as well. So that just gives you a pretty broad way of thinking about it. And that, to me, is the way that many businesses need to be thinking, because the entrepreneurs are already in that space. They're already thinking about how to make a difference. And if you're thinking in those terms, you're a social entrepreneur too.
Well, you when you introduced that to me, that was so new to me. I remember going out and buying this book. It's called The Power of Serving Others. You Can't Start Where You Are by Gary Morrish and Dean Nelson. And when I read this book, it really, really described me as an individual. You know, it talked about helping others can give you a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose. And when you introduced that concept of social entrepreneurship to me, I went out, read more about it. There was a book, I can't think of the book that you gave to David and I, but I was looking at some of your lectures, and you talk about the things that every social entrepreneur should know. What are some of those things?
Well, there's a long list there. I mean, I can rattle off a couple of things. So people sometimes think social entrepreneurship must be easier than traditional entrepreneurship because people will buy your product, for example, because it has a good purpose behind it, and that, frankly, that's not true. What makes it harder is you're trying to do more than one thing at the same time. So, you talked about the Harker brothers. They're trying to sell ice cream to people, but at the same time, they're trying to build the lives of some young people. And when in doing so, that is just as hard as doing the marketing. And you're trying to do both at the same time. So I always tell social entrepreneurs, one of the things you got to know is social entrepreneurship is hard work. This ain't easy. This is to make it an easy way to go. Social entrepreneurs have to stay up on things. There's a very much a changing landscape on what is considered social entrepreneurship, where the funding comes from, who's involved, and those kinds of things. So, I always encourage people who are into social entrepreneurship, you need to go to conferences and talk to people and set up your brain trust to help you to do it. And then the third thing I'd say for social entrepreneurs is you really need to be clear about what your social impact is, because people will challenge you on that all the time. Oh, are you really making a difference? You said that you're in this to make a difference. Well, how are you doing it? How are you measuring it? How are you keeping track of it? Because that's going to separate you from other businesses that are doing similar work but don't have a social objective, the first in what they're doing.
Well, I know in my introduction of you, I mentioned that you spoke on 6 of the 6 continents. And as our team was doing our research, and I knew this because I've called you on several occasions, and I was wondering why you didn't pick up the phone. And your wife was like, "Oh, this dude is in Africa." Talk to us about your trip to South Africa. What effect did it have on you spiritually and as a social entrepreneur and a professor? Because I know you were there doing that type of work that you just talked about a few minutes ago.
Yeah, so I've been to South Africa a few times, and an amazing experience. And let me just take a half step back. So people sometimes ask me, you've been to South Africa and you've been to different countries in West Africa. You've been to Ghana and Nigeria and Senegal, and they say, well, which place should I go to first? And there's actually a really good rationale for why you might go to one versus the other, because there's a connection that we have as African Americans to the continent. If you're looking for the genealogical or familiar type of connection, then I would say start with West Africa, because you'll see in Ghana, you'll see in Senegal, you'll see in Nigeria the people who many of us came from, who are here in the United States. The transatlantic slave trade didn't know borders on the African continent, so it was everything along that west coast, and therefore, when you go there and visit, you see people, and you see your cousin's face on somebody you never met, or your uncle or your auntie. And what's amazing to me is, again, you go there and you see this connection to cultural and to a presence that's there. But the connection in South Africa is different. There was a struggle, and continues to be in some ways, but certainly a struggle that was there in terms of civil rights and human rights in South Africa that many of us who have lived here in the United States and know the history of civil rights, and even stretching back to slavery and to the Emancipation Proclamation, you can relate to. What apartheid did in South Africa has so many similarities to what happened to people of African descent here, and all people of color here in the United States. And so you can see the stories. I mean, there's some parallels. We have the connection to understanding Nelson Mandela, and to what happened in the early 90s for him being released, and then going through the period of time to have a government that was established, and then being elected president in 1994. All of that is there. So to me, it is a place that I relate to because of that struggle, and you can see so much about how people can go through these times and come out the other side. And it's just, you can't describe it until you've been there. But when you hear people tell their stories and hear them talk about what happened to their families and how they're trying to recover and be restored from that, then you start to get it. And then there's the arc of the information and things that has happened since then. So it's not all good. Just because there was a period in time where the white South Africans lost power back in 1994, doesn't mean that everything's been roses and rainbows. Well, there's still a lot of poverty there. There's still a lot of broken promises that have happened since then, because you're thinking about a country that has limited resources but great infrastructure. But what happens when you don't make investments in education, and don't make investments into housing, and don't make the other investments that need to be made? Well, 25 years later, there's still people struggling and economically depressed. So South Africa has lots of challenges going on. So to me, when I bring my students there, when I visit there, when I bring my students to meet social entrepreneurs, they're talking about trying to address some of the same challenges that we talk about here in the United States.
It's interesting, Jeff. I watched last night, I had your niece and nephew watching Serafina. And it's interesting, as I'm listening to you describe South Africa, at that time the film came out, which went on to become a Broadway show. Nelson Mandela was in prison. So one of the things that I'm doing with the children here every day, we watch a film, an African-American film. Two things that you mentioned I want to elevate. You talked about struggle and you talked about story. In my introduction, I talked about how entrepreneurs are being hit because of COVID-19. What are some stories, and What are some stories and struggles that you're hearing from entrepreneurs and small business owners right now?
Yeah, there's struggle right now. In fact, even as we're talking, I'm getting a text from one of our entrepreneurs that I've been working with. The challenge is nobody has any good understanding about what's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. We hear things, then it changes. We're all on lock home and stay at home orders. So there's all this uncertainty. Then depending on what kind of business you have, your complete business model has been exploded. So for some, like the woman who just texted me, her business was based upon having after-school programs. So if all the schools are closed, what business do you have now? You have nothing. So now you're panicking. At least you could be panicking and trying to figure out what's my next step. So I think that's one level is people understanding if I have a restaurant or if I have a transportation business and none of those things are happening right now, so I have no income coming in. The fact is most small business owners don't have months and months of reserve. They have maybe a month, if that, of reserve. And so they are concerned about their business. The second level, which is, all right, so now there's all this, talk about recovery, providing some kind of economic relief for individuals and for companies. And there's a lot of confusing information out there. As we talk right now, they've signed the CARES Act, and that's I think generally a positive thing. But the details is where you got to be concerned, and then not just details, but how will it be implemented? So again, as a small business owner, I wonder, how will this affect me? How will I have access to it? Will it help me to make payroll, to support myself and my family? All of these things are just all uncertainties right now. So you have to really take a step back and think and process this and then do something positive that's going to help you going forward.
Well, I know the great Mark Cuban, the owner of the Mavericks and someone who I have a lot of respect for, watching Shark Tank, learned a lot from him. He was just recently quoted in an article, how to avoid layoffs and other advice for small business owners during COVID-19. What should entrepreneurs do during that time? I know he talked about experimenting with new ideas, really getting to know your employees, cleaning up parts of the business you've been neglecting for over a period of time. Those are Mark Cuban's suggestions. Dr. Robinson, what should entrepreneurs be doing during this time?
Well, I agree with all those points, but let me add a couple other things. I think first and foremost, you got to think about self-care and family care. I mean, if you haven't done that already, business owners need to think about how am I taking care of myself and how am I taking care of my family. I think second thing I would put out there is, we talked about connection before. I think you got to start talking to some other entrepreneurs because if you just talk to other people, they're not necessarily going to understand where you're coming from, but other entrepreneurs will. They may not be in the same business as you, but they may know of the resources. There are so many. I'm getting emails about webinars and call in virtual town halls and things for your community, for your chamber of commerce. You need to get in on those and listen to hear what some of the topics are and ask questions. So you can stay informed, because there's going to be a boatload of programs and initiatives coming out here in the coming weeks, and you need to know what your opportunities and options are. I think I got two more. I think you need to get your paperwork in order. If you haven't paid your taxes, you don't have evidence that you're a legitimate registered business, you need to get all those things. Most of those things can be looked at online and printed out, because that information is going to be necessary for you to be able to access some of these resources. Some of the toughest decisions are about the layoffs versus furloughs, and whether your employees will get access to capital for themselves and their families. And there's some interesting new rules out there So you want to really stay informed and up to the minute from valued sources. Because if you don't, you're gonna miss out on some of the payroll relief or some of the forgivable loans that are coming down the pipe. I think that's a good list to start with. And talk to me in a few weeks. I probably can tell you some more.
Well, you mentioned opportunities. What are some big opportunities that exist right now for some of the small businesses?
Well, it's challenging because there's so many different types of businesses. I'm interested to see what anybody who was doing stuff with schools is going to do at this point, right?
Well, I'm one of those. You can ask me. You talking about you're interested.
So this is the time to shift, right?
Yes.
So now we got to figure out ways to use the virtual environments and to think about how to get how to use all of the video conferencing that we've got and how to make it better and different than what other people are doing. I mean, just as an example, it is a time for some reinvention. What we used to do even a few weeks ago is now shattered. So we've got to come up with some new patterns. So what are the opportunities to take what you do and to change the delivery of it into something that could be done online or through video or other methods. So I think that's like number one. I think there's going to be a ton of opportunities that are in this space of delivery and logistics. And if you're in that space already, you're probably in good shape because you're still going to need to move stuff around. You hear Amazon and Aldi's and some food companies are all gearing up because they realize people aren't going to be going from place to place. They're going to be trying to purchase things online. They're going to be making efforts to go to very specific kinds of stores because that's the only place we can go. So what kinds of opportunities do you have in that space? Certainly healthcare, another big space. How does your business interface with the healthcare side of things? Because if you have a way of interfacing with them, that might be a way, a business opportunity for you. I mean, those are two big areas that are going to be, set up. Even in the next few weeks, they're going to be looking for opportunities. So I think those are some things to consider. And then I think there's actually going to be a new industry of technical assistance just to help people through these next 6 months access these opportunities. So if you have any expertise in working with these kinds of forms and bureaucracies, you may come in handy as a consultant or as a technical advisor to other businesses that are out there who are trying to access these kinds of opportunities and initiatives.
Well, we know Dr. Robinson has a lot of resources and information. I told you he was amazing. I'm hoping that you all have taken notes. Doc, how can our listeners get in contact with you?
Well, they can go to my website, which is jeffreyrobinsonphd.com, JEFFREY, RobinsonPhD.com. They can contact me through there. I post the information on the website that will be useful to all.
Well, Jeff, this is my favorite part of the show. It's called the Super Bomb Questions. And sound bombing is about healing. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I need you to respond to them as quickly as possible. All right, you ready, Dr. Robinson?
All right, I'm ready.
Here we go. What's your favorite word?
Favorite word is jazz.
What's your favorite quote or Bible verse?
Bible verse. Proverbs 3:5. You want me to say it too?
You got to say it, brother.
See, now you're gonna make me forget everything. Jesus wept.
that old school.
That's my favorite.
That's that old school at the table when you praying over your food. What's your superpower?
Superpower, connecting with people.
What's your spirit animal or animal spirit?
The wolf.
What moves you to tears of joy?
People achieving their potential.
What moves you to tears of sorrow?
People not able to make their potential.
What do you wish you had more time to do?
More time to spend outside with my children.
What dead person would you most like to meet or get advice from?
Ooh, that's a good one. I got a couple in my mind, but the one that I'm thinking of right now is A. Philip Randolph.
Good choice. What is the book or books you've given most as a gift, and why?
The one I've given most as a gift is my own book, Black Faces in White Places.
That was a good shout out. That was a good shout out. If you were in the Mr. America talent competition, what would your talent be?
Ooh, yeah. What kind of talent would I have in that kind of competition? Because I'm not a musician or anything. So I guess it would have to be some oratorical speech that I would give.
Boom, there it is, my man, Dr. Jeffrey Robinson. Check him out. Go online if you are a business owner or not a business owner. If you want to share this information with any other business owner, I thank you, Jeff, for coming into the studio and sitting down with me. I also want to thank my engineer, Alec Blanc, my producer, Kimberly Peterson, Supremacy for our theme music, and for all of you for listening. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and stop being stingy. Share me with your friends. And as always, believe that something wonderful is about to happen and that some people miss the message because they're too busy looking for the mess. Thanks for tuning in. Do something for someone other than yourself. You've been listening to Sound Bombing. Thanks, Dr. Robinson, for joining us today.
Right. Thank you.
Peace.